So in this commentary, I kind of want to talk about a big overarching issue that's kind of plagued Uncharted for quite a while, and I know quite a people complain about it when they play. And that's blind fire versus like aiming, or basically R1ing versus L1ing in Uncharted. But you can hip fire in quite a few shooters, so I'll definitely draw some comparisons to other and kind of talk about the history of aiming versus just hip fire and how it's kind of changed over time. And the gameplay you'll be seeing here is an old scrimmage against OMG as a 2v2 on facility. It's a really good match. And let me start off by saying that when it comes to aiming and like hip firing, it really hasn't always been the way it is, because when it comes to that, I mean, originally in shooters there was no really like zooming in, like in terms of like Call of Duty for example. You usually, what they refer to it as is ADS, or aiming down your sights, or in Uncharted you'll just be in like a standard animation, then you'll press L1 to aim, and usually you can press like one of the sticks in or something, and you can zoom in further with like weapons that have stronger zooming in features. But back in the day, this wasn't really the case outside of like maybe snipers. For example, in Counter-Strike, you don't really zoom in unless you have a sniper or something with a scope. So you're basically always kind of aiming and shooting, which it appears like the character is always hip firing, but they're still aiming.
Yeah.
And in most modern shooters these days, you'll play, I mean, hipfire isn't nearly as ridiculous as you'll find as in Uncharted, where even in Call of Duty you'll have like this like reticule when you're not like aiming down your sights, whether it be an iron sight or a red dot or the scope of your sniper. You'll always have this little reticule, and your bullets kind of just more or less kind of go there. It's an estimate more or less, and you're still kind of aiming. So when I usually play like a first-person shooter that is like this, which is most these days, I usually laugh when people are like, "Oh, aim down sights, faggot," or scrub or something. It's like, you're still aiming. It's just you're not aiming down the sights. Like a lot of these people who complain about this are a lot more modernish players who like haven't really been around the block to play shooters in a while. Because I mean, if they have, they would know that hip firing or whatever. This is very new in shooters, and this is probably something that kind of started more or less this generation or very late in last generation in terms of games, because I mean, Counter-Strike and other games, like, you were always just kind of aiming. You don't really zoom in or anything. There wasn't really a button to aim. You were just always aiming in a shooter. And now with Call of Duty kind of taking over everything, they allowed you to like aim down your sights for a little bit more precision. And I mean, I don't really have a problem with this, but I feel like a lot of people don't really have a really good understanding of hip fire and what the purpose of it is exactly, versus like aiming, when people think like, oh, if you don't aim down your sights or something, you have no skill. That being said, in terms of Uncharted, it's a pretty unique game when it comes to aiming and not aiming, because it's just ridiculous in general. I mean, let's start off talking about the hip fire in Uncharted versus like in other shooters. As I said, in other shooters, you usually always kind of have a reticule when you're not L1ing or aiming. And when it comes to Uncharted, you don't really have that. That reticule doesn't really appear until you tap R1 to fire your gun, and then this like ovalish shaped thing appears. That being said, this is universal among basically all the weapons in the game. It's just gonna all be oval. It's not like any wider or any bigger. For example, if you play Call of Duty, I guess, the hip fire for the sniper is a much wider than it would be for like an SMG or an assault rifle, for example. In Uncharted, it's more or less all the same, which I don't really understand the design or concept behind that, but I mean, it is what it is. And I mean, when it comes to the hip fire, the biggest issue with it is the bullets don't really go where this like little reticule for when you're hip firing go. I mean, you've probably seen some gameplay of some dude like jumping in the air, blind firing a hammer or an RPG or some shotgun. I mean, it really is just a ludicrous. Like, it's not so much like the blind fire, it's just the fact that in Uncharted there's an auto lock when it comes to when you're hip firing, and it's really ridiculous. Like the auto lock, like it's been like that even in Uncharted 2, but I feel like in Uncharted 3 that auto lock like was taken to another level. It's like Naughty Dog wasn't satisfied with how accurate hip fire was in Uncharted 2, which it was fairly accurate. They decided to crank it up even further in Uncharted 3, which in my opinion was a bad move. Maybe someone out there actually thinks the very ridiculous auto-lock benefits the gameplay. Maybe it makes it more fun or exciting to jump off buildings and blind fire and kill people, but it's not so much the realism I'm looking for. It's more or less I feel like the auto-lock kind of takes away the skill from the game. And I'm sure some of you will probably agree with this, that the game, when a game is like literally more or less locking onto bullets to nearby targets for you, like, is there really any skill in hip firing? I mean, in other games, people always mock hip firing, but you're still aiming, whereas in Uncharted, you're not really aiming. The game's kind of just taking over at a certain distance. The game kind of just, I don't know, makes the bullets go where they more or less shouldn't. I mean, regardless of where you're positioned. I mean, some might argue, oh, well, you kind of have to have your camera positioned in the right way. You have to be facing the opponent, but that definitely isn't the case. I mean, there's multiple examples that you can look around and just ask anyone who's played Uncharted 3 quite a bit, and they'll tell you you don't really need to aim all that much with your hip fire to like connect. And what really irks me is when I see people hip firing, and you see like how ridiculous the auto lock is. Like, bullets will be curving, like your character will be facing one direction, like the target's like maybe like, let's say, I don't know, at your 8 or 6, and you'll see like these bullets like curve. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, bullets don't come out of the muzzle of a gun and curve backwards. This isn't wanting, okay? This is, I mean, I'm not asking for super realism. What I am asking is that bullets don't curve at that angle. Please, I mean, for God's sakes. I mean, I don't think anyone except for maybe a few, which I'd love to hear these few people say why they actually enjoy this, why these bullets are curving and locking onto targets. And this goes the same with like the melee. I mean, I remember like playing, and this dude will just be hip firing me, and he'll connect a few bullets, and then I'll watch. I'll watch as like the dude who was not even looking straight at me magically turns his character around and just punches me and like slides a few feet. I mean, I know this has part to do with lag and such, but I just find it so ridiculous that this hasn't been addressed, or like why Naughty Dog decided to not like tone it down in Uncharted 3, whereas I feel like they made it even more effective. I'm not sure if they honestly did make it more effective, but that's just how I feel, and I know a lot of people would agree. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Thankfully, the health system in Uncharted 3 was a little bit higher than Uncharted 2 after they lowered it, so I mean, it was a little bit more bearable, but I don't know, even with the increase of health, like, it almost made it more like prevalent, I guess. Like, wow, look at these bullets curve. I mean, they really do. Like, you really got to see like how ridiculous it was. I mean, you'd see these plays of the weeks or whatever, and like kids would be jumping off of buildings, and like the rockets are like flying across at angles. It was literally laughable why this was accepted and why Naughty Dog didn't change this. Like, how many threads were there on the forums? How many people complained or criticized, saying, hey, like, tone it down or something? And Naughty Dog really didn't do anything. They would, like, do minor tweaks, like, oh, well, we'll nerf the Cal hip fire, or we'll nerf the M9. And then you'll play the game with a new update, and you'll see that it's barely any different. It's just as effective as it was before. I mean, in this gameplay here, this is basically kind of like a scrimmage, but it's a competitive scrimmage among two groups of people that are very strong players, and you see, like, we more or less, I mean, I don't want to say exploit, but we are very aware of how effective hipfire is at a certain range, and we know how it works. And as you can see here, this is at the same time when the Gmail was a pretty lethal weapon. And I mean, people use that. Why? Oh, right, because when you zoomed in, the game basically aimed for you. I mean, some people, I love seeing like people saying, oh man, now that Uncharted 3 is all like blind fire now, and like back in the day it took more skill. Did it really take more skill? This game where you L1 and the game's like heavily aiming for you, like the aim assist was like pulled you towards your target so heavily. It was a joke. How is this more skilled than like the hip fire? At the same time, I have to look at Naughty Dog and be like, how could you have like nerfed like the aim assist when you're aiming, and not have nerfed the hip fire significantly, knowing what would have happened, knowing that people did aim, and now that there wasn't going to be as much aim assist, people were going to rely more on hip fire more than ever. Why? Why didn't Naughty Dog consider this? You can't just look at something and see that people are complaining about it and then just nerf it and not think of the consequences. This was the error in Uncharted 2 where they decreased the health and they didn't think about all the possibilities, how situational awareness was going to be even better than ever, and other people's health was lower, and getting the drop on people is that much more important. Or how effective the pistol melee would be now, even more than before. I mean, you have to think of all these things. You can't just do one thing and not expect like a chain reaction of things to happen in your multiplayer. And I feel like Naughty Dog never really like looks at the big picture, just doesn't think about it so much. I mean, I'd love to get some feedback and maybe Naughty Dog tell or like leave some thoughts saying, hey, we did think about it, but I mean, we couldn't foretell everything, which I perfectly understand. They can't like foresee everything. That being said, I just can't see how they didn't see the whole like blind fire thing taking off this bad, and how they didn't do anything about it. It's almost like I feel at this point, because I don't hear anything or see anything, I almost feel like this is what they wanted. This is acceptable. This is what they wanted from their game. And it's really disappointing to like have to think that. I mean, I don't really have any ways to directly contact them outside of like going to the forums and stuff, but I mean, I just don't really understand why they continue to, I don't know, not address this issue. I mean, I'm not even asking for another patch. I just want them to say something, say, hey, the hip fire or the blind fire in this game's ridiculous, and then the next entries in our multiplayer, we're definitely gonna think about adjusting it or something. Like, I just want them to say it, to acknowledge it. Kind of like after they lowered the health to 1.05, I want them to acknowledge that this is a problem or this is an issue, and they'll change it. Or maybe they, but I mean, because they don't say it, I'm just assuming they don't view it as an issue. I mean, that's all I can assume. And this is even more crucial than even the lower health. I mean, that just affected Uncharted 2. This hip fire thing with Uncharted, this is something that has affected Uncharted since Uncharted 2 to Uncharted 3, and it became worse in Uncharted 3, many would say. I mean, how? How can they not, like, comment on this? Like, are they okay with this? I mean, I've played with some of the people in Naughty Dog, and I mean, I'm not going to judge people based on how they play, but I mean, since, like, I never really hear them talk about the hip fire and, like, how they really feel about it, and, like, how they're perfectly okay with how accurate it is, the auto lock. And I've played with them, and like more often than not, a lot of these people from Naughty Dog will be hip firing. I mean, everyone does it. I can't really fault them specifically, but I can just only make assumptions that they thought this was acceptable and okay. I don't think that's good, in my opinion. I mean, it's their game, I guess, ultimately. When it comes down to it, if they wanted their game to be more accessible or whatever, or you wanted to play like this, I mean, I guess Naughty Dog's vision of their multiplayer was a bunch of people running around shooting bullets and having them curve around walls because of how ridiculously heavy the auto lock is when they're hip firing. Or they wanted people on the aim assist to be so like prevalent. I mean, I don't remember these being large issues in Uncharted 2. I mean, yeah, it had aim assist, and yeah, another factor in Uncharted 2 is there's pretty low recoil on just about any gun, ranging from the FAL to the AK. The recoil is just low in general, but I mean, in Uncharted 3 there's more recoil. What, do they feel like they had to have more aim assist to balance this out? Like, I just don't really understand why there was so much aim assist when there was aiming, and why there was so much auto lock when people were hip firing. It's just, I really do wish Naughty Dog took a look at like some other shooters and looked at how hipfire was handled there, because I feel like they could definitely learn a lot. They could incorporate that in their game, and I think it would improve the quality of their game overall. But I mean, maybe they just have a different idea of what their multiplayer is. Maybe they want it to be more silly, more fun. I mean, I'm assuming, like, just by looking at some of the kickbacks or whatever, I mean, Speedy G cursed or whatever, I mean, it's hard to look at this game and not wonder, I mean, was this game really supposed to be taken seriously? I mean, are people really supposed to try hard? And it's a shame, because there's a lot of core mechanics in this game that have a lot of potential, and like, it's just, it works really well at a certain level. This game does really work. It's just there are certain gleaming things, like the hip fire, for instance, that just it draws the game out from like that level of, wow, this could really be something. This could be compared to like a Halo or a Gears or a Counter-Strike. It's just there's some gleaming issues that need to be addressed and changed if people were to take this game a little bit more seriously. I mean, the cat ears and the little microtransactions aside, what really matters is the gameplay. I don't really care what people are wearing, what the characters are looking, as long as the game's fundamentally sound. That's what really matters to me as a player. and it really hurts when I want something to be said about this hip fire since Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3 it was worse. I don't know, I don't really know why they haven't like said anything, addressed it, commented on it. Do they just feel this is how their game's intended to be? I don't really know. I mean, if it is, then I guess this is kind of pointless in saying this is how Uncharted's meant to be. It's not supposed to be super serious, super balanced. All the little like quick booming and stuff aside, this is how Uncharted was meant to be in Naughty Dog's eyes. And if it is, it's a little disappointing to me as a player who wanted more from this multiplayer, I guess. That being said, I mean, it's never really been a multiplayer that's been large. It's not as big as Call of Duty or Uncharted or like whatever other big multiplayers out there. League of Legends, I mean that's pretty big right now too. It's a shame because I really wanted to be that. I feel like it's definitely unique. It's definitely got its own flavor. It's a third-person shooter with its own flavor, and I feel like the whole hip fire thing, while some people might not initially like see that as like a deal breaker, those who spend some time in it are like, wow, yeah, this hip fire thing's ridiculous. Like playing any other shooter, you'll see hip fire does not work this way. My bullets do not curve when I play like COD. My bullets certainly like don't auto lock onto targets in any other shooter, honestly, when I'm hip firing. It's only really in Uncharted. And I mean that's kind of about it for this video. I mean this is kind of like a 20-minute video, but I didn't really have any more gameplay. It's like a little bit shorter, unfortunately. I have a lot of like competitive gameplay. And I kind of want to end this video on some notes. Like, I'm pretty open to suggestions from you guys. I mean, if you guys have any questions or something you want me to talk about personally, maybe it's not even Uncharted. I mean, maybe you just want to ask me something. I'll definitely respond. Don't be shy to ask me questions. I always reply to like messages or any comments. I usually like to reply as long as I feel like there's something to be said. I mean, if you say great video or something, I don't really know what to say to that. I mean, I like starting discussions and stuff. That's why I usually ask people to leave comments. Because I like some back and forth between the people who watch my videos, who I appreciate, and those who actually take the time to like say something, so we can like, I don't know, explore some thoughts, some new ideas together, and maybe we can all come away with something new that we never thought of before. So, I mean, if you guys have any suggestions for some videos, whether it be Uncharted or something else, I'll definitely keep an open mind to it, and I highly appreciate it if you did, because I mean, I do like doing these commentaries and stuff, and I do have some other plans. There'll be some dual commentaries with someone like in the future if this person's willing to do. I'm not gonna say who, but I mean I do have some plans for what's going on, and I do play other games, and I'll definitely continue to upload different games for those who don't just love playing Uncharted. But I mean, I'll continue doing what I'm doing, but I also really would love for you guys to give me some suggestions and some feedback.
5 kills left.
See what I can do, see what I can answer from you guys if you guys actually have any questions or not. And I hope you enjoy the rest of this gameplay. This was a pretty good close match between both teams. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.
Oh, shit! Oh! Shit! Oh, God! Whoa! Ow! Whoa!
Heroes win.